Welcome to the Bluestocking Circle podcast, lady nerds on popular culture. We're your hosts, Kat,
B,
and Gricel.
This is Minisode 34.5, follow-up and first impressions. Well, I'm happy to report that I watched the entirety of the new Netflix Babysitters Club series and loved it. I thought they made some smart changes, and actually some of the issues we mentioned were addressed, but they ultimately kept the spirit and the heart of the books. Did either of you catch any episodes?
I don't have Netflix, but I'm thinking of getting it just to watch the series because I've heard such great things.
It's worth it.
I actually kind of wanted to watch it after seeing the trailer because the trailer did look cute enough to at least invest some time into it, so I might try to catch that after I finish what I'm currently watching.
I would be actually very curious to hear your opinion, Gricel, because I think that they do, like I said, address some of the issues that we talked about and sort of made it definitely more diverse, but even just a little more better about like dealing with being a teaching sort of book or show.
Does anybody really want more of my opinions, though?
Yes. But one small example of sort of how they change things, the show definitely spends more time with the relationship between Marianne and her dad. And it's really nice, and it gives more backstory to Marianne, and I think also really highlights the ways that she's similar to her dad. In the books, I always thought he just comes off as like a real stick in the mud, and they don't really explain why he's so strict with Marianne, like her clothing, her hair, her room. But the show definitely like reveals more about this and why he would feel that way. And I thought it was done really well. And it had me tearing up at the end of episode 4, I have to say.
Aw.
It was a very sweet father-daughter moment.
What are the issues they addressed that we talked about in our episode, besides the strictness of her father?
Well, they sort of breeze over the diabetes, so like that isn't as huge of a thing in
You
the
mean you
show.
won't die of the diabetes?
Yeah, so that was definitely a big one. And they definitely made the families in the whole town more diverse. So the casting of the central girls is definitely more diverse in the books, but I also appreciated that the townspeople that populate are diverse and have diverse types of relationships. And they also dealt more with like real world issues, I'll say, instead of just sort of more internal focused everyday teen. So I guess, I don't know. I don't want to give like spoilers per se, but important historic events in American history come into play with one of the characters.
Is that character Mimi?
Yes.
I know what you're talking about then.
Okay, yeah, I didn't want to like give anything away, but I thought that they handled it really well, and it made everything kind of more grounded and makes you realize more of what it would be like to grow up in this country as an immigrant and always be classified kind of as an other.
Follow-up question. How devastating was Mimi's storyline?
It was pretty sad. Done very well. And also they very smartly tie it to Claudia's story of being an artist, and like before that she doesn't really know what to say or what to express with her art, and hearing about Mimi's story leads her to sort of change how she is doing her art and what she's focusing on. So I thought that was like a really smart way to handle it and to show how people like deal with learning about these things. The show definitely only covers a small part of the series, and they very smartly focus on like the early books and the beginnings of all of these relationships. So there are definitely things later on that the show hasn't covered. And I hope that there's more seasons and we get to see those things covered. So I hope it does well. And I hope people are inspired to read the books after watching the show.
And I hope the pandemic ends quickly so they can resume filming.
Oh,
Yeah, I know. I was thinking that. I was like, oh, these girls are not going to look 13 forever as they are in the books.
well, girls age quickly, so they can excuse that.
Yeah.
I will say that I think Netflix does a really good job at book adaptations because every book adaptation I've seen of a work that I've read has been really close or very true to the story. So I'm in Netflix's corner on that.
Yeah. I think we're in a real like heyday for adaptations of books because of Netflix and Hulu, where these things can be miniseries instead of just a movie. Because as we saw with the Babysitters Club movie, it's really difficult to just shove that much character and plot and just all of the buildup of these things into 2 hours or even less than 2 hours. So it's really nice that the series is able to exist, and it makes me happy.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that because, yeah, for the movie, it almost felt like this was a taste and it was not developed far enough.
Yeah, I really think that with a new series, if someone started watching that and started reading the books, it's like a very similar vibe. I really also appreciated that the series keeps the spirit of the books by each episode is about a different girl and has that girl narrate it, and like you get to see more insight into their life in those episodes. And I think that's a big part of why the books are so appealing is like you get insight into each of the different girls. So I like that the series kept that. I also just this week read a really good essay in the New York Times Book Review written by a male author who talked about how he was embarrassed by his love of the BSC books when he was a kid. But now that his daughters are reading them, he really appreciates them in a new way. And it was really interesting. His main point was sort of that the BSC books are domestic stories, and reading them can lay the groundwork for comprehending more dense literary fiction. And he gives the example of authors like Faulkner and Virginia Woolf, who are so internal with their stories and are also very domestic. So I really like this take and can see how the books kind of boil down to communication conflicts, and like the resolution always comes from the girls talking it out. And just personally thinking of them that way, it made me realize why I love reading advice columns, is because you get to like peek into people's lives. And I feel like the BSE books allow that. And I do like that kind of fiction now, like really like dense internal stories. So I don't know. I think he's right. It primed me for that life.
I feel like I could go on a whole tangent about internalized misogyny and the reasons why males don't want to read books aimed at female audiences. And I could go on, but I won't.
Oh,
But I could.
yeah. I'm so there with you, and it like makes me so happy when I read something like this and read about how he did enjoy these books and how obviously these books are relevant to more than just young girls, but then it also just like breaks my heart to think like how many people aren't reading them or are being made fun of for reading them because they're a boy. And I have a friend actually who has talked to me about reading Anne of Green Gables as a young boy, and I was just like, of course, those books are amazing and like have so much there for like any imaginative child, but they're just like aimed at girls all the time, and it's very upsetting.
Gilbert Blythe should be the model for every boy growing up.
Ugh, definitely.
A perfect specimen.
Yes. And I could go on and on about how much I love their relationship of Anne and Gilbert, and how, yes, if more men had him as an example, they would probably be more successful in their love lives. Now we would normally be doing our cat catches up segment, but I have to put it off for another day because I'm still catching up and have not done my reading, so apologies. And now for our first impressions on our next work, B.
Next time on the podcast, we are continuing our summer nostalgia with a flashback to the wonderful days of 2012, back when we thought the world was going to end soon instead of knowing the world was going to end soon. We will be covering the Disney animated series Gravity Falls, which ran from 2012 to 2016 over the course of two very spread out seasons. And Kat, you will be our newbie next time, so tell us, what do you know about Gravity Falls?
I know that there's a Simpsons connection. Maybe the creator worked on The Simpsons, or maybe he's just a big fan. I just know that I heard him on a Simpsons podcast once. And I know that it has some Twin Peaks like qualities, but that it's animated and for kids. So,
That's correct. I saw an early review of the series that called it Simpsons meets Twin Peaks, and that's actually the reason why I watched Gravity Falls after hearing about it for a while.
yeah, that sounds like enough for me.
Gricel, do you have any first impressions? Because you haven't seen this either.
I have zero impressions other than that you told us that it was on the Disney Channel or Disney Plus, and I saw a very
Yes?
brief teaser. So it's cartoons. There are some children looking things, and maybe they scream a lot. That's all I got. Some sort of summer camp, maybe?
Maybe, maybe not. I will say that it has one of the all time great theme songs. I'm excited for you two to watch this. I don't know how you're going to react, honestly, but I'm hopeful. Perhaps a little overly optimistic, but hopeful nonetheless. As for which episodes we're watching, although I would love to assign the entire series, it's been pointed out that it's not feasible. So instead, I have selected 9 episodes, totaling a very reasonable 3 hours. These episodes are Tourist Trapped, which is the pilot, Headhunters, The Hand That Rocks the Maple, The Inconveniencing, The Time Traveler's Pig, Dreamscaperers, Gideon Rises, Into the Bunker, and Society of the Blind Eye, and you can find the full list on our show notes. These episodes are from both seasons of the series, and they focus mostly on the series myth arc without giving away any major spoilers. The idea being that if you like the series, you can go back and watch it from the start while still being relatively unspoiled for the big twists. I will note the series is way more serialized than you think a Disney animated series would be, so there's going to be plenty of references in the latter episodes to earlier episodes that we're skipping, but I believe these 9 episodes should make sense nonetheless as their own little whole. So pop open a can of Pit Cola, grab your grappling hook, and dust off your journal. Then join us next time as we head to Gravity Falls. Episode 35, Gravity Falls, will be released on August 1st. In the meantime, you may find us at thebluestockingcircle.com and on Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, Pinterest, and pretty much everywhere at Blue Sock Circle. That's Blue, SOX, Circle. Email us at thebluestockingcircle@gmail.com to join the conversation. We are also available on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, and YouTube, so please rate, review, and subscribe to help us grow.
Cheers! How much of a spoiler is it when you read like all 120 of these things?
Well, there might be new people who got so excited about our episode that they started reading it for the first time and don't know the things that happened.
Sure.
Okay.